Okay, so this new archetype came out of nowhere and actually dominated a premier event in the OCG. Yugioh is a new archetype debuting in the side set crossover breakers, and these guys are actually really powerful. They just won the YOT, or the Yu-Gi-Oh! Open tournament, which took place in Singapore, and this is basically the equivalent of a YCS in the OCG and was one of their first premier events of the season. Now, they did cap it off to only 400 players, but they still took top 64 cut. Now, taking a look at the top 16 breakdown, there was a whopping 5 Yugioh decks actually in the top 16, which is a lot more than Snake Eyes. This deck actually took a dominant third of the top 16 with only 2 Snake Eye decks there, despite being basically full power. Like, again, guys, they have Appaloosa, they have Beatrice, they have Lacrima. Everything is out there in the format, which is like a testament to how good this deck is, I think, at least at a premier event level. Also, a Lone Malice deck in the top 4. Interesting. Also interesting to know that there were some big name players in this event. Chia Cheng Wang, the 2018 world champion, as well as the runner-up in the 2019, as well as a third-time world participant. He was actually at this Worlds 2024 in Seattle alongside Charles Liu, who also was a 2-time world attender, once in 2019 and once this year. They also finished first and second place at the Asian qualifier, the WCQ that happened this year, and they came top 64 at this YOT. So it's definitely not a walk in the park because there was only 400 players, right? And this event was actually live streamed, so I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at the recap. But before we dive into that, let's take a look at the archetype really fast so you guys at least know how this deck functions. So the Yugiohs are basically a rank 4 spam deck, and they operate a lot like the playstyle of Sprites combined with pure Zodiac, just spamming the board with a bunch of monsters that you can overlay and start searching your deck for additional resources. Yugioh is one of the main starters. This monster allows you to special summon itself from your hand by sending an Xyz monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. Now, all of these monster effects actually lock you into rank 4 Xyz monsters for the rest of the turn, a lot like how Sprites kind of lock you into the level 2s. And then if this card is summoned while you control no other monsters, you can actually add a Fire Thunder monster from your deck to the hand, which is basically what some of the other Yugiohs are. Also interesting to know that this summon is actually a cost, a lot like Black Witch, but it doesn't start a chain. So you can actually send something clever like Meteorologic Aggregator, and when Aggregator is sent to the graveyard from anywhere, you get to target a face-up card on the field and negate the effect. So this works really well against like Floodgates or monsters that might be problematic, so you can bait them out. Ice Yugioh is another monster starter that allows you to special summon itself from your hand by sending a card from your hand or field to the graveyard, a lot like Black Witch, more or less. But you can also normal summon this monster, and when you do, you get the effect to special summon any Yugioh monster from your deck except itself. So already off the bat, you get 2 very powerful starters that can be special summoned or normal summoned. Thode Yugioh is a Fire Thunder monster, aka a target for Yugioh, and this card says if you have a Yugioh monster on your field or in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand as a free extender, and then when it's summoned, you can actually add a light Pyro monster from your deck to the hand. So Thode Yugioh can actually search for Yugioh or the Ice Yugioh, and then Yugioh can go ahead and search for Thode Yugioh, so you basically just need access to one of the monsters to get a bunch of them into rotation, a lot like how Sprites work. And then the last one that's actually played is the Node Yugioh, which is a one of, and it's a Fire Thunder as well that allows you to special summon it from your hand if you have an Xyz monster on your field or in your graveyard. And it also has an onboard effect where you can send a card from your hand or field to the graveyard and special summon a Yugioh monster in your graveyard, including Xyz monsters, but you do negate their effects. So it's just like an additional toolbox option. Moving on to the Xyz cards, they actually have 2 in-house Xyz monsters, starting with Yugioh Detonator. This is a rank 4 Pyro monster that requires 2 or more level 4 Yugioh monsters. It says when your opponent activates a card or quick effect, you can actually detach a material from this card and target one card on the field, destroy it. So this becomes your first level of disruption because it can effectively respond to anything and pop a card on the field, a lot like how Zodiac Dryden works, except this can also target face downs. And then if this card is special summoned, you can actually attach a monster from your graveyard to it as material. This can be any monster, including something like a Meteorologic Aggregator that you might have sent off of the Yugioh, which means that you have an additional resource to negate something when you do detach a material with Detonator's actual effect. You can also protect your Xyz monsters from being destroyed by card effects or by battle by detaching a material from this card. So it's really handy dandy. It makes it so Dark Hole and Raigeki aren't nearly as effective in the Tenpai deck. So a lot like Zodiac, they've already gotten a Dryden pop, but what if I told you they got an even stronger monster in the form of Yugioh Dual Drive? This card is actually generic and can be made using any 2 level 4 monsters. It boosts your monster's attack by 100 for every material that is attached to it, and also your opponent's monsters lose 100 attack, so it's kind of like like Chenying. You can also attach a Raizio monster to it from the graveyard as a material when it's summoned, but the best part of this monster is the fact that during your main phase, you can actually detach 2 materials from any monsters you control, kind of like Gigantic Sprite, and if you do, you can add any 2 Raizio cards with different names from your deck to your hand. That's absolutely busted. This is literally Zodiac Broadbow on crack, because you can add any Raizio cards with different names. So this is automatically a +2 on legs, which is absolutely crazy to even think about. Being able to go into dual drive means you instantly have access to basically your entire engine. So let's take a quick look at the engine cards and see what the heck we're dealing with. Raizio Plugin is a quick play spell card that says target an Xyz monster or a Raizio monster in your graveyard or banishment, special summon it, then you can attach a Raizio card from your deck to 1 rank 4 Xyz monster you control as material. So this card is really nice for an extender, but also for the purpose of follow-up. You can search it off of dual drive, and then you can always reborn an Xyz monster. Then you can attach a free Raizio card to it, so it gets some materials and you can start playing. Raizio Cross is a field spell that allows you to target 2 Raizio cards in your graveyard, place them on the bottom of your deck in any order, then draw a free card. So it gives the deck a lot of recovery and follow-up, a lot like how Rescue Ace HQ kind of did the same thing for Rescue Ace. But the scariest part of this card is the fact that when it's on the field, it becomes a disruption. It says once per turn, when an opponent's activated monster effect resolves, you can detach a material from a Raizio Xyz monster you control, and if you do, negate that effect. Now, the crazy part about this effect is that it's a continuous effect, which means it does interact favorably into things like Sanguine Summoning. Sanguine Summoning reads that your Fire Dragon monsters are unaffected by your opponent's activated effects, and because Raizio Cross does not activate for the second effect, it means it's still able to negate any Tenpai monster's effects, even with Sanguine Summoning on the board, so that's really relevant. Raizio Hole Thruster, yeah, this is an interesting name. This is a trap card that says target face-up cards your opponent controls up to the number of Raizio Xyz monsters you control, destroy them, then you can attach 1 Raizio card from your graveyard to a rank 4 Xyz monster you control as a material. So this is a searchable disruption that can pop a bunch of cards all at once. It also has a graveyard effect that allows you to banish it, and then Xyz summon using monsters you control, including a Raizio monster. So this can also be very relevant, and you can use it on the same turn that's actually sent to the graveyard. So if you want to dodge like targeting disruption like Imperm or Veiler, you can definitely chain Hole Thruster's effect in the graveyard to do that. And then one more card is an honorary mention that we do not have in TCG yet, is 7th Tachyon. This is a card that allows you to reveal a number Xyz monster in your extra deck, and then add a monster from your deck to your hand that has the same type or attribute and the same rank as a revealed monster to your hand. Then you have to place a card from your hand on top of the deck, but it's basically a reinforcement of the army for any of your monsters, because you can just reveal the corresponding Xyz monster in your extra deck at rank 4, then add the Raizio monster that you're missing to start your combos. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's dive in and take a look at the finals replay of the YLT. Again, this tournament had 400 players, and it's actually Yugioh versus Raizio. So the Yugioh player wins the roll, goes first, activates the opening of the Spirit Gates, and adds a copy of the Dark Beckoning Beast. I'm gonna normal summon that, use the effect. And one thing to note is that the stream was actually not commentated. Also, it was at like 400p, so yeah, it's not me, guys. This is just how the stream looked. It gets hit with an effect failure, so we're gonna have to actually link off here and go into the Almirage. Sometimes, you know, when you brick in Yubels, you kind of have to rely on this line. Again, you can use the effect of the opening of the Spirit Gates, discard a card to reborn a monster with 0 attack and defense from your graveyard, so you can do that easily with the help of Almirage. Then this allows you to go directly off into the Fiendsmith engine, because any 2 monsters just goes into Moon, right? So this is what the player does. So we're gonna hit the Requiem on the table, use the effect, and get hit by an Ash Blossom. So Veiler plus Ash is gonna be huge here, and you can see the player shaking his head, gonna set one and pass. Yeah, I mean, when you have to go into that Almirage play, it's pretty obvious you're telegraphing that's probably your only play, so hitting that with an Ash is just, you know, correct. So the Raizio player obviously in a really good spot now. Also, this Raizio player is actually named Slime. He's a YouTuber as well, a YouTuber really popular from Taiwan. So I'll leave a link to his channel below. Definitely check that out. He's got some great content. Even if you don't understand Mandarin, you can use the subtitles, I'm sure, or the closed captioning. So in the draw phase, we're actually gonna get hit by a Max C preemptively. Sometimes you do this, you know, you can't really afford to wait just because some of the Raizios are inherent effects, so a lot like Black Witch, or not inherent, I don't know what the terminology is, but they don't start a chain to special summon, so you definitely want to shotgun this, especially when you're in a desperate position like the Yugioh player is, where every draw literally counts, right, to survive. Because Raizios can OTK you pretty easily, they just spam the board a lot like how Sprites did, and they're just really annoying to deal with. So Raziel player is going to put his cards down and think for a second. But one thing to note is that Raziels were not too popular in Japan, but they were kind of popular in the Asian metagame outside of Japan. Even though the OCG is one format, it's still split into territories, a lot like how Europe and USA kind of has different playstyles. You know, the plant deck being insanely good in the in Europe, but not being too good in the States, vice versa. So it's interesting that there were a lot of Raziel decks actually in the top cut of this tournament. But we're gonna activate Pot of Desires. Again, this deck plays a lot of 3-ofs, right? You don't really care about banishing a particular card. It's a lot like how in Sprites previously, some players were playing Desires as well, just because you had multiple cards to deal with. So just a free way to draw 2 cards. But starting off really strong, 2 hand traps plus a Pot of Desires. Still under max C though, so that's just one thing to be wary of. You can't really... It's hard sometimes, like you can't really play in a max C. You want to go for the OTK, but when your opponent has like 1 card in hand plus a set, it could be like an Imperm plus they draw a Nibiru, and it's just very difficult. So we're going to see a pass here. The Raziel players are going to pass back with no cards, but then he's going to drop Furos. Remember, guys, they actually have 6 copies of max C in the OCG. The Molcharmy Furos allows you to draw a card anytime your opponent special summons from the deck or the extra deck, and you can only activate it while you control no cards. So that's a really nice way to mitigate that max C. Passing back so the Yugioh player takes a -1 on that max C, and then we're going to hit them with Furos, which is either going to cause them to pass back to us, so we kind of traded 1-for-1 with the max C off the Furos, or they're going to give us some draws, and hopefully we can hit them with some other hand traps. So it's a very difficult situation here. Yugioh players are going to set another card, just pass back. So now this is a really good spot for the Raziel player. We traded with the max C successfully, and there is no board on the opposing side of the field despite 2 turns passing by. So just really nice how that interacted. Very powerful hand. I'm sure the Desires came heavily in clutch there alongside the Veiler and the Ash Blossom. So now we're going to go off and summon the Ice Raziel. Remember, guys, when this card is normal summoned, you can actually special summon a Raziel monster from your deck. So we're going to trigger that effect, see if there's a response here. This is one of the strongest starters in the deck itself, one of the most high impactful normal summons, because it can just build your entire board. We're going to see an Impermanence hit that Ice Raziel. But again, hand traps don't really hurt this deck as much, just like how in Sprites, if you Veiler something, they just go special summon another name, and it's full combo. So this is exactly what we see happen here. The one extender being Thode Raziel that allows you to special summon itself out from your hand when you control a Raziel monster in your field or graveyard. And then when this card is special summoned, you can actually add a light Pyro monster from your deck to your hand. So we're actually going to add another Raziel here to continue playing. So we go ahead and add the X Raziel, another extender that can be special summoned by sending an Xyz monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. And it's just crazy how these guys really snowball. You know, the playstyle is not super original. It's a lot like Sprites plus Zodiac plus like Math Mech all smushed together. We're going to activate a copy of the field spell though, Raziel Cross. This card is really important because it says when an opponent's activated monster effect resolves from anywhere, you can negate the effect by detaching a material. So that includes monster effects in the hand as well. So Nibiru, stuff like that. So we are actually going to overlay into a copy of the Raziel Dual Drive while we have the field spell up to potentially protect it from any hand traps like Veiler or Nibiru later on. So we are going to go ahead and use the effect of the Dual Drive to detach to search for 2 copies of Raziel cards with different names. And the fact that this resolved means that the game is basically over. We're going to go ahead and add a copy of Raziel Plugin, which is the Monster Reborn quick play spell card that can special summon any Xyz monster or Raziel monster. We're also going to add a copy of Node Raziel that's also an extender that can be special summoned out from your hand if you have an Xyz monster on your field or your graveyard. So from here, we are going to special summon out that Node Raziel, and then we're going to use the effect of Node Raziel that allows you to send a card from your hand to the graveyard to special summon a Raziel monster from your graveyard back. So we're going to discard a card, bring back that Ice Raziel onto the table, and now we can use these 2 to go off into our other monster, which is Raziel Dual Drive. So this is a form of disruption already. 3000 attack as well on a rank 4 body is just insane. Like, the power creep is really real, guys. So now we are going to attach a copy of the Full Rules back because you get the free option to attach. And now we can start popping things during our opponent's turn, while we also have the Raziel Cross, the field spell online to negate a monster effect that our opponent controls during their turn as well. And then this is a really good position. See if we can actually go for a game here. We already have 5,500 damage on board with the 2 Xyz monsters. So depending on if we have some more extenders, I mean, we know that we already added the copy of X Ryzeo, so that's going to hit the table by sending a Xyz monster from the extra deck. Again, does not start a chain, so no activations here. And then we're just going to special summon out the Thode Ryzeo. So again, actually, they did not use the effect yet to special summon from hand. Earlier, that was the Ice Ryzeo's effect to summon it from the deck, the Thode Ryzeo. So that's something that the Yugioh player just clarified, and I actually missed that as well. So that means that we actually have basically a game on the table, right? We have nib protection with the field spell up, the Ryzeo Cross. Again, that does negate any activated opponent's monster effect by detaching a material from a Ryzeo monster upon the resolution. So if we just overlay one more time for a 3k attack, aka another Ryzeo detonator, that should just be game. 3k, 25 is just going to be 85. So the Ryzeo player just takes a moment to think about that. But it looks like they're just going to go for the Dugaris instead. So Dugaris has a couple of nice abilities. Obviously, the effect to draw 2, the effect to make a monster attack twice, or the effect to reborn a monster. And this is obviously just another rank 4 toolbox monster that's in the extra deck. Because again, you're locked into rank 4 XEs. A lot like how Sprites had to kind of scour the entire card pool to see what good rank 2s were in the game. This is exactly like that. Just taking advantage of all the good rank 4s that were previously good and viable and seeing, you know, what the heck is the best option. So Dugaris is really nice. We can get a translation here for Dugaris. Actually goes for the draw 2 effect with Dugaris instead and actually gets hit by the Ash Blossom. Kind of interesting that he chose to go this route. I presume maybe trying to play around Spirit of Yugioh, but again, Cross would have been able to negate that, which we see here, just negating the Ash Blossom instead. And then the Yugioh player actually scoops it up. So yeah, decisive game 1 victory going to the Ryzeo player, aka Slime here, just getting very a pretty broken hand, honestly. Like Pot of Desires plus Veiler plus Ash, just very powerful, plus the Furos to cancel out with the Maxi, and then just going off into game 2. So yeah, you can kind of see how the deck can snowball despite one single hand trap, and Imperm is just not enough. Anytime the deck has extenders, just like Sprites, it spams the board, gets a full combo, and then you are in a very bad spot. All right, game 2 firing off. Yugioh player decides to go first again, and we get hit by a D-Shifter. Holy smokes, I think I see a Maxi in the Yugioh player's hand, which gets shut off by the Shifter as well. So again, one of the most strongest things about a rank 4 Xyz deck like this is that you get to play D-Shifter. I know Sprites at some point also played D-Shifter, so it's definitely possible to take advantage of one of the strongest hand traps in the current TCG. We're going to see a opening the Spirit Gate, same opening here, going to add a copy of the Dark Beckoning Beast, and then this will still allow Yugioh to somewhat play. You know, depending on their hand, they can still put up a board, at least put up Phantom under Shifter, which makes it a lot more resilient than something like Snake Eyes, because really all you have is like IQ Masquerena plus like Temple. But we are going to add a copy of the Chaos Beast here off of the Dark Beckoning Beast. Then we do still have the normal summon, the addition of normal summon, so there are definitely some plays here, like Beansmith is not going to be too good because Shifter is obviously just shutting off the graveyard, but then there are like Phantom plays. Sometimes if your hand is really good enough, you can start popping your Yugiohs and still get the effect in the Banish, put up like a Varudras. So we are actually going to see a fusion summon using the hard drawn Yugioh plus the Dark Beckoning Beast to go off into a Phantom in defense mode, and then from here probably just, you know, hedge on some hand traps, have the Phantom as additional disruption, and hope that we actually survive. Unfortunately, cards like Maxi not going to be able to be used under Shifter, which is another reason why Shifter is so broken in the OCG, and it's actually at 2 copies on the ban list. So yeah, we're going to see a pass here, set 1 pass with the Phantom of Yugioh. Wow, we actually see a preemptive D barrier being shotgun. That's kind of interesting that it actually got shotgun. I would have presumed that maybe you wait until they at least have 2 monsters, or they Xyz summon and you negate the Xyz, a lot like how back in Zodiac format you would wait for them to Xyz summon and invest more materials on the board. But nope, we're going to see that being activated immediately, calling Xyz. So that's going to be something that's very high impact, I think, in the TCG as well. If Ryzeos get popular, is staring down D-Barrier, and you can't really do much because your entire extra deck is basically Xyz monsters, right? So you basically, I think the game plan as a Ryzeo player is to play hand traps and then make it so your opponent does not have much of a board, so the D-Barrier is not as threatening, so you can survive a turn. Kind of like how Shifter, you know, made it so the Yugioh player's board is not super huge. Maybe we can survive a turn. Now, one thing to note is that the Shifter does hurt the Ryzeos. You cannot actually use the cost of cards like X Ryzeo to send from your extra deck to the graveyard. So it's kind of like how Black Witch is locked under that. So you're not going to be able to use a lot of your extenders by sending a card from your hand or the field or the extra deck to the graveyard, like Ice Ryzeo or X Ryzeo. But if you have your other extenders plus any body, you can still start to play and combo off, right? The rest of your play is not impeded. It's just really those 2 extender effects that you're not going to be able to use. But again, when Shifter hurts your opponent more than it does you, there's no reason not to play it. A lot like how in Tenpai, it's like whatever, you know, we don't care about the graveyard. So we're gonna hit an Imperm on the Phantom of Yugioh. Imperm plus D-Shifter, very, very powerful, and an Ice Ryzeal to boot. One of the best starters under Shifter, because this card can completely play under Shifter. You special summon a monster upon normal summon. That's gonna resolve because the Imperm hit the Yugioh Phantom. We're gonna get Thode Ryzeal. Thode Ryzeal's effect's gonna proc to now add a copy of X Ryzeal, and we're gonna be like very, very ahead. This is the thing that's crazy about this deck. It's almost like a modern proof Sprite, because Sprite previously you had to have a level 2 body on board before summoning out Sprite Blue or Sprite Jet to get the effects, right? But now in this deck, you know, you can normal summon and get the same thing that you would by special summoning like a Sprite Blue. You're getting multiple bodies onto your rotation immediately, so that's just huge. We are going to go to battle phase here and see the Thode Ryzeal swing over the negated Phantom. Then we're going to take 17 off of the direct attack from the Ice Ryzeal. And then we are again under the D-Barrier, which I assume you would have a plan going in a tournament, knowing that D-Barrier is just, you know, prevalent and you're playing an extra deck full of Xyz monsters. There's probably a game plan here. I assume like predominantly you want to whittle down your opponent's board with hand traps, kind of like what we saw here. So like we can skip and live a turn under D-Barrier. But I'm sure there are some other ways maybe to pivot, potentially. We're going to see in a second here what happens. So we are going to set a card. So yeah, I guess like, you know, the idea that you play a lot of defensive cards that allow you to mitigate the dimensional barrier by making it so your opponent doesn't end with a board and you can survive another turn before playing under barriers. So that's going to happen here. So we are going to see a Fiendsmith being discarded. I know that was probably in their opening hand, I believe. Under Shifter, you can't really do much with the Fiendsmith, unfortunately. But now that Shifter has subsided, Shifter being negated, I guess, by barrier is a 1-for-1 trade. Kind of nice how that interaction worked. Dimensional card versus dimensional card. Then we're going to add a copy of Tract, and we can basically have a pretty clean full combo here. I mean, we're not really staring down anything threatening. No disruptions that are visible at the moment in time. Just 2 monster bodies, plus we know they have X Ryzeal in the hand that was searched last turn, plus a mystery back row, which could be maybe an Imperm. We're going to go off and summon the Chaos Summoning Beast to see what we can go into here. We do have the Fiendsmith line in rotation with the Tract, so the Ryzeal player has to be aware of that. We're going to go off into the Almirage, just like game 1, and then use the effect of the Spirit Gates, discarding another Fiendsmith. Okay, we're going to bring back the Chaos Summoning Beast here. We have some options. I know the Yugioh extra decks are really tight, so we're probably not seeing anything like a Nightmare Phoenix, but I assume this is some way to try and bait out that back row before going off into our Fiendsmith combos. Again, they do have the Fiendsmith, basically the full combo. Their ban list does not hit anything. They still have Appaloosa, they still have Beatrice, they still have Lacrima being one of the most important, but they do not have Aerial Eater, unlike the TCG, so that's just something that they have to mitigate, I guess, by using the rest of the full power Fiendsmith engine. Definitely a lot more powerful than the TCG one post our ban list. So take a moment to think here. We're going to link off and then go into a link 2. So we are going to go to SP. Okay, so instead of trying to go for game here, we're just going to play it safe. Going to go SP, presumably targeting the back row there, trying to bait that out. And then, of course, the Thode Ryzeal only has 1500 attack, so this 1600 SP will be able to swing over it. That's actually quite relevant, especially in a deck like Yugioh where you have most of your monsters are 0 attack. It can be very hard to swing over stuff by battle. Wow, and evenly matched. Okay, bluff set, evenly matched is going to get hit. I really highlight the importance of actually setting bluff cards. Like previously, I used to just hold everything in my hand, but now I realize in a high intensity situation, especially, setting bluff cards really matters because it forces your opponent to play awkwardly because they're scared of things like Imperm that might be real. So they're wasting like SP Little Knights on like, you know, the evenly match, which is great, right? Otherwise, if we didn't set that, then the SP could have honestly been an entirely different line that would have been more threatening. So we're going to see the Lure hit the table thanks to the effect of Tract. And now we have some options. I mean, Fiendsmith in the graveyard has not brought itself back yet either, but that SP Little Knight is in a bit of an awkward spot in the extra monster zone. The arrows pointing to either side, left and right, which means that we're gonna have to link it off in order to be able to play with our Fiendsmith sequence. So that means we're actually gonna waste a monster body because we're using a link 2 plus a body to make another link 2 rather than link climbing into a link 3, right? So that's going to indeed be a copy of sequence. We do have Fiendsmith still in the graveyard, so Valor would not really matter. We can just bring back Fiendsmith and continue to play. So we are going to go off, let's see, into presumably Lacrima, maybe into Beatrice, so we can start going off into our Yugioh combo. All we need is to foolish either the Samsara D Lotus or a Yugioh monster and then bring that back off of something like a Muckracker. So we are going to see that potentially happen here. Just bring back the Fiendsmith. But Nibiru is pretty threatening here. We have no way to protect against Nibiru in this line. Like, if we get nibbed here, it's pretty painful, I want to say. Like, there's no... I guess you're just like, if you're a Yugioh player, you're just in that situation where there's no way you can kind of play around it. So just going to go off into the Beatrice here and then probably go off into the Yugioh lines. Beatrice effect being detaching. Beatrice is actually a 1 in the OCG, which is funny. I don't know why they hit it to 1 when players are only playing 1, but I assume it's also going to be banned on the upcoming ban list, I believe, which is coming out on the 23rd of September. So yes, we're going to see a Spirit of Yugioh being foolish to graveyard, and then potentially gonna go off into the Muckracker here to try and bring that back. Locks us into Fiends, but it doesn't matter because all the Yugioh stuff are Fiends. So yes, Muckracker is going to hit the table. And interesting that they actually chose to foolish the Spirit of Yugioh instead of the Samsara D Lotus. I assume it's a little safer there because even if they have a way to disrupt the Muckracker, then you still have the Spirit of Yugioh in the graveyard so you can make Phantom. So yeah, I like this a lot better. The D Lotus in the graveyard does not matter at all. This is just like a safer, cleaner play. So we're going to use the Muckracker, which is an effect, not a cost. Going to take a moment to read this just to make sure. I don't know if we have a disruption here. A Veiler would actually really hurt. So we are going to discard that last card in hand, which is the Impermanence. Bring back the Spirit. And if Spirit resolves, then we are very, very ahead because we can go and set the copy of Nightmare Pain to add a copy of the Grave Squirmer by popping the Spirit, summon out Yugioh. We get multiple Phantoms online. Yeah, it's very, very, very quick to snowball. And, you know, potentially, like, sometimes if you can get enough bodies on the board, you can just swing into your opponent's monsters with the Yugioh stuff to make them reflect the damage off of Nightmare Pain and just go for game. But I don't see that being feasible because the strongest attack monster on the Raziel player's side is just that Ice Raziel, which is 1700. But we will just standard Yugioh stuff, shenanigans, bring out the Yugioh off of the Spirit that was popped with Nightmare Pain. Have a copy of the Gruesome Grave Skirmer come out to pop the Yugioh. Yugioh's effect will trigger. Bring out the terrorizing Yugioh level 11, Terror Incarnate. And then we also have 2 Yugiohs now in the grave, so we can easily contact Fusion for consecutive copies of Phantom, either as defense or as bodies to continue link climbing into. So yeah, this is a very, very dominant position, I think, for the Yugioh player. The fact that the Dimensional Barrier really put in a lot of work, because if that Dimensional Barrier did not hit the table, then that Shifter would have just completely run away with the game thanks to the Raziels being able to snowball and XC summon. So we are going to go off directly into a copy of Yama. That's going to add a copy of Shavara. We still have Gravescrimmer in the graveyard plus the Yugioh monsters to go into Phantom. So yeah, we're going to go off into the Spirit here. I think would have been nice to go off into Phantom there first, just to, you know, for good measure, right? Like, you know, your opponent probably doesn't have Nib, but still just get that monster effect onto the table, please. Or starting to play more with the rest of our cards, but that's all right. It doesn't really matter here. We're going to probably now Shavara, pop the Spirit, get that Yugioh back into rotation again. And then this is potentially enough damage to just go for game the good old-fashioned way if we're able to get enough bodies on the board. But we'll see. If it's not enough damage, it's still enough in terms of disruptions, I would assume, to have a very, very dominating position in this game. Again, Shavara being able to set a copy of the Trap as well, so the Unchained Chamber or the Unchained Escape. I know a lot of OCG players have tended to play Escape for whatever reason. I think Chamber's still better, but you know, sometimes they have different metas. Maybe Escape is better into Max C. It looks like it's not going to be enough to go for game, so we're just going to get rid of these bodies, do some damage, and then set up a board in main phase 2 and have the Raziel player try and break that with 3 cards in hand, drawing to 4, one of which is known as the X Raziel. So we know they have one extender / potential starter. And wow, in the end of this battle phase, we are seeing an evenly matched. Holy smokes. I'm actually surprised that they set the second copy of evenly matched because they had 2 evenlies, and the Yugioh player's like hands in his head right now. Like, what the heck do I do? Oh no, the fact that he went to battle phase before setting up a negation really hurts here because he's gonna lose everything except for presumably just the Phantom, I imagine. Yeah, no cards in hand. This is a huge evenly matched. Like, this evenly matched is, I would not have expected it because you already popped the first evenly, you banished it rather with SP. So now you're thinking like, okay, how am I going to, you know, like, how am I going to run in another evenly? Also, I noticed, yeah, I guess they can't go for game because they're under SP Little Knight. So yeah, I can't even attack directly. which makes me think maybe they should have just set their board first before going into the battle phase. But I mean, there's no way you could have anticipated the second evenly like this, especially when they set the first one, which is really risky because if your opponent did not, well, I guess it kind of makes sense because you can still flip that set evenly in the end of the battle phase. Now, you know what? Never mind. That does make sense. That's actually a really, really interesting heads up play there. We are going to see a lot of stuff get banished. I mean, is that Phantom also getting banished? We are going to bring back Fiendsmith, so we have not yet used that. That's good. And then we're just going to go, okay, so we're going to go off into Rage here and then just have the double negate there. I guess that is a lot better than Phantom. Also, it gives us a body potentially to deal some damage, whereas Phantom is just a 0/0 that chills there. So nice follow-up. We have Fiendsmith on the next turn plus the Rage. So yeah, let's see how the Ryzeo player deals with this. We have 4 cards in hand now. Summon out a copy of the X Ryzeo. Again, this cannot be interacted with. It does not activate, and the Meteorologic Aggregator, again, like we talked about previously, being sent as a cost for the X Ryzeo will negate the Caesar, and that's just huge. That's so crazy that you can actually summon out this card and then negate a card effect on the field that doesn't even have to be a monster. It can be a floodgate. That's actually like insane. Now we're going to add a copy of Ice Ryzeo, normal summon that, and that's just full combo. That is crazy. The evenly matched went hard. Wow. I think I actually saw a couple of evenlies on the stream throughout the feature matches. So it's kind of interesting how evenly matched is so powerful now that Omni Negates are not as popular anymore. Even though they still have Baron Defleur and like Savage in the OCG, those cards are just not seeing as much play. So now we're just going to add a copy of the other Ryzeo and then just go off into the dual drive. Dual drive is going to attach a card back to itself. Then we can detach, search for infinite cards. And this is just like infinite values. So I think the Yugioh player sees the writing on the wall. That evenly matched was so huge. Only there's a way to play around that. I'm not even sure there was, to be honest, because yeah, how do you even anticipate an evenly on your turn? It's very, very difficult. I'm gonna add a copy of Cross plus the quick play spell card that allows them to special summon back. It's called Ryzeo Plug-in. Yep. These guys are just giant war mechs / Gundams that are very unoriginal in terms of art style and also play style. But hey, you know, when you play competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, you want to win. You just play decks that are good, right? And here's that Ryzeo are really, really good. So we're going to do some additional BM here by shuffling back 2 cards to draw a card off of Ryzeo Cross. Not taking any single chances. We want to win this game on this turn, making sure that there's no way that the Yugioh player can play. Use the effect of the Node Ryzeo to bring back a copy of the Ice Ryzeo in the graveyard. And then from here, we can just start overlaying and probably get rid of that Caesar and attack for game. So yes, we see a rank 4 coming out. What do we have in the toolbox? We have a lot of different cards. Even Giant Hand could be potentially played. Abyss Dweller. You know, these cards are very, very powerful inboard pieces. There are a lot of powerful rank 4 Xyz monsters in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's honestly kind of scary to think about. So we are going to see a copy of the Ryzeo Detonator hit the table. That's a 3k body on a rank 4 monster, which is pretty crazy in terms of power creep. And this, of course, is just additional damage. We're going to summon out the Ice Ryzeo from the hand using the effect by discarding Called By. Just more bodies to make another rank 4 with. One thing that the rank 4 decks kind of struggled with in the past was putting enough damage to go for a game. But it seems like Ryzeos have a lot easier way to do that with all the additional extenders, plus the fact that Detonator just has 3k attack. We're going to go for the Malevolent Sin, I believe. This card is actually really, really nice. It says that you can detach a material to banish an opponent's monster until the next standby phase, until their next standby phase. So this is a lot like how Sprites would play Onibimaru Soul Sweeper just to get rid of a body. And that's going to be game, because again, the monsters do gain 100 attack for every material thanks to dual drive. So that's just really, really clutch. Gonna attack for game there, and that evenly match is just super, super critical. So pretty crazy. I mean, a demonstration of how the Ryzeo deck plays. It's a lot like Zodiac / Sprite / traditional rank 4 spam deck. What do you guys think? I don't know when we're getting the crossover breakers, but I'm sure that this deck will be very threatening in the TCG, especially without Max C in the format. Spam decks are always very powerful in decks like this, and you can also negate Nib with the Ryzeo Cross. Interested to see how well this deck does with D-Barrier still in the format, but did you guys enjoy this type of content? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.